Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. All right, so the GOP and Trump and MAGA are still trying to get this so-called big, beautiful bill passed. I call it the big, brutal bill because of the way it cuts so many programs and so much money from these programs that poor working people need so desperately. Some $880 billion in various cuts from Medicaid. And I'm telling you that a lot of African-American people are on Medicaid. A disproportionate percentage of African-American people are on Medicaid. So we would stand to hurt the most from cuts to Medicaid. Now, of course, the Trump administration and the GOP and Speaker Mike Johnson love to say, well, we're not cutting anything from Medicaid. What we're doing is we're getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse because, they say that there are well-able-bodied men who are getting Medicaid and they should be working. And so I want you to hear some comments from Senator Warnock, Raphael Warnock of Georgia, who's also a Baptist preacher. And we all know no one put words together like a Baptist preacher, most especially the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who used his oratorical skills to move a nation, to take giant steps toward doing right by African-American people. And here now is Senator Warnock, who is in the same pulpit that Dr. King once pastored and once stood in. And so he got some words to say about how they're trying to cut Medicaid without calling it cuts by imposing work requirement provisions. And let me say, no one has any problem with folks working. People need to work. Don't misunderstand me. But there's a twist in these work requirements that I'll explain to you in just a moment. But let's hear from Senator Warnock.
Welcome back. And joining me now is Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia. He's the author of a new children's book. We're in this together, Leo's Lunchbox, a story about sharing. Senator Warnock, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good morning. Great to be here with you on my way to church.
Well, thank you for stopping by. I know church is the highest priority, but thank you for making us a priority as well. We appreciate it. Let's start right off where I was talking with the speaker. One of the big issues in what is now officially called the Big Beautiful Bill Act is, of course, Medicaid. And he makes the argument people should have to work in order to get Medicaid benefits. What's wrong with that argument? Why shouldn't people have to go to work in order to get Medicaid?
Good morning again to you and your audience. Listen, I am a big advocate for work. I have a fierce work ethic. It was something passed on to me by my late father, who was a preacher and a junk man. And every day, he was picking up old junk cars to feed our family. And on Sunday morning, the man who picked up cars that had been thrown away picked up people who've been thrown away. And this is what this legislation does, that they're trying to do. They're going to throw poor people away. I believe in work. And I recently released a study in Georgia that shows that this work reporting requirement, because that's what we're talking about, not work requirements, work reporting requirements is very good at kicking people off of their health care. It's not good at incentivizing work at all. There's something wrong-headed about this kind of view of poor people, of working class people, that somehow they don't want to go to work. We have seen this failed experiment in Georgia. We've got over 500,000 people in Georgia who are in the health care coverage gap. They are largely the working poor. The governor has put a program in place. He calls it Prosperity to Coverage. You ought to call it, or pathways to coverage, you ought to call it pathways or blockages to coverage, because they've only enrolled about 7,000 people. That's pathetic. And the data clearly shows that if you want to get people to work, the way to do that is to provide them just basic health care so that they don't get sick. And what they're trying to do now is take this terrible experiment in Georgia, force it on the whole nation. And what we will see as a result of that is a workforce that is sicker and poorer and an economy that's weaker.
And we should know.
And let me also say, and I think it's really important now, let me just highlight a couple of things that he said and then add some information. So first, he said it's work requirements, not work itself. And see, the issue with the work requirements is they will cause people, as he said, to get kicked off of Medicaid because essentially the work requirements, the reporting of work, the reporting to comply with the work requirements is nothing but red tape, basically. Just red tape. Right? And if you don't have this, if you don't have that, if you don't do this by that time, this, that, and the other, sorry, you're kicked off. And we've already seen that happen. And we've seen also in other states, not just Georgia, but in other states where errors are made, a lot of errors. And the other thing is most of the people on Medicaid already work. According to KFF, the Kaiser Family Foundation, I think it's called, did a study, an in-depth study. They keep up with this stuff. And they determined that 68% of adults on Medicaid work. Again, 68%. That's like 2/3 actively work. It's just that they don't make enough money to be able to afford outside health insurance. So they get insurance through Medicaid, but they're already working. And then an additional 24% of the adults on Medicaid are exempt from working because they're in school or they're disabled or they are taking care of a loved one. But they have been legally exempt from working because of a very legitimate reason. So you add 68% to 24%, that's 92% of the adults on Medicaid who are already working or who are legally exempt from working. So that leaves 8%. 8% who are either not working and have no legitimate reason for not working. And that's what Mike Johnson talks about when he talks about getting rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse. I just got a note. Demonizing of the working poor, that really irks me. I mean, I came from a working poor family, a family where my father worked 10, 11, 12-hour days, 6 days a week. He never made much money. He didn't have much education, but he was a hard worker, and so was my mother. And so to call those people, like my parents and so many others, lazy and shiftless and no good and sorry and so on, is racist, first and foremost. And it's a horrible stereotype that people, powerful people oftentimes, powerful, rich people like to throw at, the working poor. And it just really rubs me wrong. Let's go back to Reverend Warnock.
Actually, that Georgia is the only state right now with work requirements. I want to move on to another aspect of this bill. The bill allocates nearly $150 billion towards border security and immigration. Under this second Trump administration, border crossings are at some of their lowest levels ever recorded. Given that most voters, senators, say that this is a top issue, do you support the measures in this bill that would strengthen the border and border security?
Listen, I support strong borders, and we don't want to see people who are criminals, who are committing awful acts, allowed into our country. But what we need is common sense immigration laws in our country. What we are witnessing right now here in the state of Georgia, for example, a young college student who is doing well, has been here most of her life. She was accidentally picked up in a traffic stop. As it turns out, the police had it all wrong. They had the wrong person. But because of these draconian movements that we're seeing, this kind of singling out and othering people, this college student found herself in the grips of ICE. And now she's trying to navigate her way through the system. I don't believe that the people who voted for me and the people who voted for Donald Trump intended for this young woman, who is a bright young woman who's already contributing to our society, to be caught up in the clutches of our immigration system. This is the politics of fear and division and distraction, and it's because they know that their agenda, their economic agenda, is not working.
And just yes or no, do you support the provisions that would strengthen border security, or are you a no on this entire bill? Just yes.
Listen,
or no.
I supported a bipartisan bill last year that would have strengthened our border. It was largely a bill focused on giving our Border Patrol the things that they needed, and the Republicans decided to kill it in order to put Donald Trump in office.
All right. Let me talk.
So I'm so glad he said that, because, they try to make it sound like the folks who are insisting on due process being followed for these folks that ICE is detaining are open border people. And I imagine some of them are open borders, are for open borders. But keep in mind, Barack Obama was called the deporter-in-chief because of all the people that he deported. So it doesn't follow that folks who insist on, as I do, due process, that we don't want strong borders. I want strong borders. Let me say that for the record. I want strong borders. As a matter of fact, right here in my area here, two folks who were in the country legally were involved in killing a young Air Force cadet. And this is alleged, okay? This is all alleged. This hasn't been, adjudicated and so on. So let me say alleged. But she allegedly killed this young woman while they were on the lake. And then she allegedly tried to escape and get away and didn't call for any help. She just ran, and then another person who was in the country illegally also tried to help her, allegedly. And so we get it. We get it. There are people in this country that need to be deported. The awful person who threw those gas bombs, those Molotov cocktail bombs on those Jewish people, was also in the country illegally. And let me say this, a couple of things. He was in the country because he overstayed his visa. So he didn't enter the country legally. And from what I understand, most of the people in the country, or used to be this way, were in the country because they overstayed their visas. All right? And also, I don't want to broad brush or stereotype folks who are in the country legally as being all criminals. Man, do I remember Trump coming down the escalator and making the statements that he made about people coming south of the border, about Mexican people. I'm not doing that. I know the data says that most people in the country illegally are not committing crimes. They're not criminals. But it is something when someone who's in the country illegally actually does something that costs a person their life. I remember the guy some months ago who threw gasoline on a woman in the subway there in New York City, and she stood there and just burnt to death from all those flames. He was in the country legally. So we get it. We get it. We don't want folks in. We don't want bad people in the country. Just respect their due process rights, because if you don't respect theirs and one of us is, in that situation, you won't respect ours. So it's not about open borders, not for me, and I don't believe for most Americans. Just need you to do the right thing. But I just want to close again on this big, brutal bill that they're trying to get passed. The Senate is back. The House passed it with one vote. The Senate is back now. And they're going to be debating it here over the next few days. And I also noticed just before I did this video that Elon Musk has come out strong against this bill, but for a very different reason than why I oppose it. I oppose it because it cuts funding from programs that working poor people need, disabled people need, and money that's earmarked for civil rights and all sorts of things, so that there's money to cover the big tax break that the very wealthiest got. Yeah, see, Elon Musk, he is saying that enough was not cut from, he's saying, yes, that there's too much spending in the bill. So he wants more cutting. He wants more programs cut. He wants them to go deeper with the cut. And that's coming from a man who is reportedly the richest man in the world. Cut more, cut more. I mean, that's going to deprive more and more and more needy people. As I said in a video a couple of weeks ago, that is not the God of the Bible. And you and I are supposed to speak up for those people. And that's what I'm doing. Not only for, just sympathy and empathy even, but because we are commanded to, if you are, as I am, a Christian, we are commanded to speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves. All right? So that's what I wanted to say about both of those issues. Senator Warnock, I think he's on the right side of this. Both ways, I think he's on the right side of the border bill. I'm glad he pointed out, too, he already supported the bill that Trump killed back here a few months ago before the election. We all remember that, right? And he's certainly on the right side of things where it comes to this big, brutal or big, ugly bill, okay? All right, so listen, thank you for watching this video. I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Remember, in the meantime, stay woke.